everyone. This is Alex, Tom's oldest daughter from Two Dads Talking. Thanks for listening to my daddy and his friend Doug's podcast. And please like, share, and subscribe to this. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Two Dads Talking. We are so happy to have you tonight. It's been quite the evening here. We're starting a little late, a little after 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time.
When I threw things off, I was out of town and then came back immediately into like work and inspections and hundreds of emails and all that fun stuff that happens when you're gone for a week out of your work bubble. So I just came in kind of counting on Tom and his very golf looking, polo shirt, and he's failing me. So
how am I failing you? My polo shirt is very golf looking. I'm wearing a collar.
Oh no, you're doing great with that. I mean, with like a topic. Lead me, Thomas.
Well, see, I will come up with a topic and we'll go through some things. But in my defense, Doug sent me a text a little while ago that said, "We're talking irrevocable trusts tonight." And my understanding was that he was bringing that topic to the table, and that's what we were talking about tonight. So I didn't realize I had to bring a topic tonight because that was the last text he sent me before we started this podcast.
I was talking about me and somebody else. How come you don't understand?
The text conversation went, "Hey, are you going to be here on time to record tonight?" And his response was, "Maybe 5 minutes late." And then, "We're talking about irrevocable trusts tonight," and just left me confused. I had no idea what was going on.
I don't understand why you didn't understand me. This is obviously clear as day now.
So while I waited for Doug to show up, and I think he was 14 or 15 minutes late instead of 5, I decided to record another odd. And if you are so inclined to join our Patreon, that makes 3 works of short fiction of mine on the odds, a deep dive into Loki to prove to Doug why Loki was an awful lot like Ford Lincoln Mercury from The Postman, to kind of explain Loki's history and tell some of the best Norse stories involving Loki. But the newest odd that I put up there is a little bit different. It's one that I wrote it about a year ago and sent the sort of the first draft out to a couple of people. And one of them wants to publish it in their biannual publication. We've got some editing to do on it because it was just a rough draft, a first draft. This is the first time I've ever publicly shared a rough draft. And I did it intentionally thinking, everyone reads stories after they've been through this editorial process. And, Stephen King's a great writer and I love reading his work, but I've always wondered what the rough draft looked like and how much it changed in the process and maybe how bad the first, parts of it were. So I'm sharing a first draft of a story. And it's so everyone can see how much it changes as we go through the editorial process, and you can see how bad it starts off versus how good it is when it's done and polished. If we have any dads out there, I frequently talk to people when they ask what I do for a living. Ultimately, we wind up talking about writing, and I frequently hear, "I've always wanted to write. I've always wanted to publish. I've got a great story I wish I could write." And I'm always telling them, well, write. Sit down and do it. You just need to bickhock that thing, put your butt in a chair and your hands on a keyboard, and you can write. You just have to do it. And we talk about this all the time. So I know there's a greater interest in writing than meets the eye. If we have any listeners who are interested in writing a story, getting something out there for publication, get into our Patreon, tune into this one, follow me through the process, ask me questions. I will engage you on Patreon, give you advice, show you how to submit this thing, how to find a publisher. We'll work through the process, and I will give you a peek behind the curtain. And you can see, not quite from day one, because, I wrote this thing a year ago, but you'll see the process from the point where you've got engagement to the point where it's actually published. And I'm happy to help anybody who wants to tell a story to do so. How's that for a segue into it? It's not bad.
That's a great segue. And if that's a big hit, I can do Mad Libs. So more to come.
That would be a fun challenge. We should do that. We should do a Mad Libs, and then I will take your Mad Libs, and we will work together to get it into something that's publishable, and see if we can publish something that started off as a Mad Libs. That would.
You already know what it's going to be called, right?
Is it safe for me to say that on the podcast? No, I don't know what it's going to be called. Go ahead.
No, I wasn't going to say Mad Libs. Dad Libs.
Oh, I like that. I like that a lot.
Duh.
Yeah, Dad Libs. That could be it's a whole podcast. We'd probably have way more structure for something like that.
We'd have to. There have to be blanks and everything.
Oh, so what are
So,
we
so
talking about tonight
I was
then?
gonna say, so what topic were you going after with that?
Um, I know what I want to talk about.
Okay. I'll figure out if I want to talk about it too.
I want to talk about legacy.
Oh God. Oh yeah, because my topic is totally deep and yours is not.
Well, you don't need any subject specific knowledge to talk about legacy. I want to talk about what legacy is, what it means to you, what you want it to be. Sometimes that might coincide. It's something I've been thinking about a lot lately. And I had a really good talk with someone about 3 weeks ago about legacy, and it kind of changed the way I looked at it. So
This will
I
be good
guess
because we're gonna have completely different ideas about legacy.
probably. And I'm
Yes.
not talking about the Subaru legacy because apparently they've discontinued that. So we're not talking about the Subaru legacy. But
Oh, it's kind of ironic, isn't it?
it
They
is.
discontinued a
It
legacy.
seems pretty on the
Wipe,
nose.
wiped out the whole family.
So Doug, what does it mean? What does legacy mean to you?
Well, let me
Let's
look
start
up.
with our definitions.
Let's look up Merriam-Webster real quick.
Ugh, blah.
Okay, a legacy is. Um, I mean, this isn't going to be like the sandwich thing, is it? Where you
I
just
don't
go
know.
like, boom, random thing, give me your definition, then I'm going to hold you to it the whole time and not let you even work through it mentally at all
No,
because
this is
you
way
did that.
more subjective than whether or not a hot dog is a sandwich. This I think is way
I
more
agree
subjective.
because a hot dog's not a sandwich. We discussed this. Um,
Goodness.
Legacy is how you're remembered.
That is exactly what I was
Not
going to say.
not, but I want to make it clear, not what you're remembered for, how you're remembered. Because it's sort of like there's sort of that Maya Angelou thing in there of people won't always remember what you did, but they'll remember how you made them feel. That's really what a legacy is. People
Yeah,
can do fantastic things, but if people don't think it's that important, guess what? Your name's not on a monument or inside of a building. So legacy is how you're remembered.
I agree. Now, which is more important if you have your saying things that you are remembered honestly or that you are remembered favorably?
Honestly,
Okay. Accurately kind of counts as honestly, I guess.
sure.
Okay. Interesting.
I would like my personal intent to kind of leak in there here and there. Like if I fucked up, then I want to, but I was trying hard. I want people to be like, well, he screwed up a couple of times, but he meant well.
Yeah, and that's fair. That's fair. That was where the root of my conversation with this gentleman kind of was we were talking about legacy and whether it was more important for your legacy to be accurate or whether it was more important for your legacy to be positive. And it was just a really interesting conversation because for me, I said, well, why not both? And the more we talked about it and thought about it, the more accurate means all the bad stuff with the good. We talked about, oh gosh, I should look up the episode number now. There was an episode where we were talking about how to talk to your kids about bad drivers. And one of the things that we talked about was like the obituary. And you were like, you know what? I'm sick of all these people's obituaries always being like, this is a beautiful
Yeah.
human being who left behind these wonderful souls and
There's
he
a
made the world a
beautiful
better
human
place.
being who got run over by an
Right.
idiot.
Right. But no one ever says in the obituary the guy got drunk and drove
Yeah.
through, somebody's house and caused $150,000 in damages before destroying a septic system and killing himself. Like no one puts that. And that's not something I would want as my legacy, God forbid, if something happened. Like I wouldn't want it to be that accurate. So it made me think, well, there's certainly a lot of unfavorable things in my life. I have made a lot of poor decisions. I have made a lot of mistakes. Some of those mistakes were made with good intentions. Some of them were made with young, stupid, whatever intentions. I don't think many of them were made maliciously, but I'm surely have made malicious decisions in my lifetime as well. Do I want all of that remembered as part of my legacy? Because if I want it to be accurate and I want to be honest, then those things kind of have to be there. So how does that work? If we have a say in it, does your legacy have everything, but we weigh things differently?
I mean,
How does that work?
in a way, it doesn't. I would imagine just strictly considering the scourge of humanity that we all share, that the Venn diagram for accurate and favorable has a very, very small intersection for even the best of us, really. I mean, think about every quote great man or great woman in history, and you start, they did that, they did this, they discovered that, they defeated this enemy, they, whatever. you can always dig up all sorts of junk about their past or their early days or people that, they personally slighted along the way to get to where they were getting. I mean, hell, part of the reason some of these people end up being remembered favorably is that they did things that were very not okay at the time, that lots that were viewed disfavorably at the time. So, ironically, some people in history probably got their more favorable remembrance when they weren't going for that at all. So, I mean, I imagine that that's actually a very small intersection, and a lot of it is just reliant on other people and how much other people liked the result of your actions.
So,
And
like a lot of other things, it's in the eye of the beholder, basically.
a little bit, yeah. I mean, how much control does any one person really have? I mean, there's the people who would excuse me, can't talk right now. The people who would sour your legacy are most likely to, if they're afraid of you now, just wait until you're dead to sour it. And once you're dead, anyone who doesn't like you has all the time in the world to undermine it. You'd have to have a real groundswell supporting you to overcome that person. So I feel like it's really entirely based on other people.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I guess to that effect, have you ever, before I asked you about it, have you ever sat down and actually thought about your legacy and what it might be? Is that something that ever registered on your priority list for
All the
cognitive
time.
function? Or yeah, okay.
Yeah, all the time. I can tell you exactly how it went too. Teenage years, right after, which I mentioned in a previous episode, right after I got over the fact that I can't woo every single woman on the face of the planet if I wanted to, I thought, okay, well, I just need to be like the biggest badass ever. I don't have to be George Washington, but I have to be like the second coming of George Washington, and that way that'll be a good legacy. And then in my 20s, I thought, okay, that's unrealistic. Slash, if you shoot for something like that, you're not going to get it because other people, you kind of have to have a little bit of, it's a poker tournament analogy. You have to get good cards, you have to play them right, and you have to have a little bit of luck too. Sometimes you have to have the right table or the right people just to help really get you there. It's possible to make it with the odds stacked against you, but it's a lot harder to actually, finish a tournament like that. Uh, then, well, it really wasn't my kids; it was just my wife. But as I got older and married, had kids, and all that, the only legacy I care about is them. I actually would welcome being sort of forgotten in the annals of history. I would like to be remembered by 1, 2, 3 generations after the fact. And after that, I'm perfectly fine being some name on a gravestone whose great great grandkids might be like, yeah, I've heard that name, but I don't know anything he did. It's fine.
That's the second death. Okay.
Yeah, I actually almost want that better
This
because
is this is the guy who wants a library or a dormitory in Notre Dame named after him. You want to be forgotten after just 2 or 3 generations?
it's
That doesn't
fine.
work.
Oh yeah, because I totally looked up every name on every building and knew what they all meant.
That's fair. No, I
So
suppose that's fair.
it's more my thought process is more like if I'm less significant in history, that removes any potential burden on my future generations to either live up to something or to put up with something. If I'm some major historical figure, there's going to be people who don't like me, which
Yeah.
means harassment from randoms for my future generation. So there's actually a part of me that's perfectly fine with being a moderately successful nothing.
Okay. I'm good with, I think I'm very similar when
Damn
it
it.
comes to legacy. Yeah, I know we're not differing on this enough to
Damn.
fight really. What matters to me is like the first thing I thought of is how my kids remember me because that'll impact, them down the years and if I leave a positive legacy behind for my kids and something meaningful and I did a good enough job that my legacy is a part of their daily life, then I'm never all the way gone. There's always going to be a part of me you feel close to, and I'll always be influencing what they're doing in their actions. And hopefully that means that I am then influencing them to do a good job with their kids and leave positive legacies behind and so on and so on and so on. So it cares most to me about my kids remember my legacy. And obviously my wife, assuming she's going to outlive me by probably 30 or 40 years. I'd like for her to,
That's a lot.
well,
What are you planning?
I'm not the healthiest of guys these days, so we'll see.
You've
But
got like about 2 months left.
I don't know. I guess maybe.
You
But
insulted my age earlier. Let's talk about yours.
yeah, I'm not afraid. I'm an old man, and I'm an old beat up man with a lot of tread in the tires. So it is what it is. But yeah, my legacy mostly matters insofar as my kids are going to remember me. It is my big thing. And for a long time, I wrote journal entries hoping that, when I pass, my kids have journal entries of mine to look back on and stay close. And I've got some stuff recorded on YouTube under a personal profile, and those links will get shared. I left a note with those, and that'll get shared after I pass, so my kids can see me and hear me, and my wife has a message from me, and that sort of thing I've got, so that there's always something there to be remembered. And I guess my legacy can kind of persist, or my presence can persist. It's probably not the same thing, but I've started thinking a lot about this podcast as a part of my legacy. Like, I talk way more personally on this podcast. I show way more unfiltered and deep sides of me here than I think I do in most places. I don't have this candid conversation with very many people. With my kids, everything is filtered. I don't tell my kids unabashedly and unfilteredly my opinions on things, because they're kids and they don't need to be exposed to that sort of thing. One day probably will, but my kids don't see the side of me right now. They don't know me on sort of a deep and personal level. And if they read my stories and they read my fiction one day, and they read my work and look at my journals, they'll get a side of me. But the podcast, honestly, this is a place where I've told people often, this is like my therapy. They tell me, what's your podcast about? And I say, oh, it's called Two Dads Talking. And, it's like 40% or 30% dad stuff about, how you don't have to be perfect to be a good dad. None of us are, and it's okay. And we support one another. And then the rest of it's kind of like two blue collar dads worked a real long, hard day in the office and then meet at a pub and just talk about whatever is on their mind. And that's kind of what the field is. And honestly, I don't think you get much more honest than that. There's no mask. There's no deception. It's really, we're allowed to disagree. We have this, I think we're very fortunate to have a chemistry, and that's why it works, where you and I each disagree with each other, and that's okay. I'm not shouting at you that you're an a-hole because you don't see something the way I do. And
Maybe for you.
well, for me, but there aren't a lot of places where you can be so free with yourself that disagreement and unabashed honesty is really on the table. This podcast is that place for me. It's one of those spaces for me. And I think in a way, my kids will probably listen to this one day, and hopefully my kids will listen to this one day when I'm gone, and it'll help them get to know me and know who I was and what I stood for, and what I had hoped for. And I think in a lot of ways, this podcast might be contributing to my legacy, even if it's, not going to be a million downloads and we're not approaching Time Suck standards or Joe Rogan experience. I think in a lot of ways, this podcast is not eternalizing, but not immortalizing, but preserving the spirit of kind of who we are. And our kids are going to have that after we're gone if they choose. And so I think this is a part of the legacy now. Something I've been thinking about for a couple of weeks. I think this is as much of it as any writing I've done. I don't know. Am I going too deep? What do you think?
Yes. I can't even
Okay.
see you down there anymore.
Well, that's good. I'll let you know when I hit the bottom of the iceberg.
Yeah. No, I mean that's similar to my thoughts. I mean, I've enjoyed this for the same reasons. How do I say this? I like to say it's the Irish in me. I'm not gonna like punch you in the face, but I love a good argument. I love a good fight of some kind, and I think it's my Irish. And I've kind of always had that attitude of, why don't you want to talk about it? Why not? And I always thought it was because people were uncomfortable and didn't really know, like they didn't really have their beliefs very convicted. Like the moment you started challenging them, they started feeling that like, oh no, maybe what I believe is wrong. And so they'd run away. And that was kind of my own hubris coming through. I think it's because most people just don't like confrontation of any kind. The vast majority of people, even throughout history, have not been about that at all. So having a spot like this where, I mean, I still remember, God, what was it? Episode 8? 7 or 8 or something. We got into when we really went into the tribal thing. We were laying into each other.
Wasn't that 11? Wasn't that
I
like reach
don't
week 11?
know.
Because that was the whole my whole argument was we have to get past tribalism and get to this week
Maybe.
11 stage. I think it was episode 11.
It was really early on, but that was the one that went really long, and I could kind of feel even the two of us kind of we were trying to be candid, but trying to maybe we were still kind of not jumping over some lines as much. And now it's just like, oh, you disagree with me? Yes, this is about to be a much better discussion.
We're a little less
Get this
polite
one.
now.
Well, it's about for me the thing about this podcast has been being challenged. I don't get a chance to be challenged very much, and I am stubborn as a mule, as is I think blatantly obvious to
Yes,
most
you were
people who get to
definitely
know
an
me.
ass. I mean, a mule.
Yes. Oh,
Yes,
I am.
definitely.
No, I am with multiple S's. So, but this has been it's been nice to take someone who can see my side of things and also end up with a completely different opinion, and it's just hard to find that now with someone who's willing to engage in it too. So that's the big one for me. Is like this is my version of iron sharpens iron a little bit too. Even if my view doesn't change, I have much more perspective, folded into it now. But yeah, I mean, I think if we were talking about legacy, I would like. I'm not going to be so bad where I'm like, okay, kids, I think you guys are ready for number 27. Let's fire it up, and you can listen.
Right.
But yeah, if this is just floating around out there, if nothing else, they can come across it someday, or I can be an old fart sitting in my armchair being like, you know what? I recorded these, and if this is just as good of a way to get to know me as any, other than sitting here and talking to me, because topics come up that just normally wouldn't come up.
Yeah, I think you give me way too much credit when you say iron sharpens iron, but I do appreciate that.
I was giving
I think
myself
I'm
too
more in
much
the
credit. I'm an ass, remember?
That's all right. All right. Well, we don't disagree on that enough for that to be a really interesting conversation, I guess. But yeah, it's been on my mind, and you as my philosophical chief debater, just kind of figured that would be something to talk about. I actually thought we'd carry that conversation on much longer, but
I mean, I'm always happy at devil's advocate stuff. I mean, I can sit there and also I feel like make a very convincing argument that if you don't have any legacy whatsoever, or your legacy only stays within your family, kind of what good are you in a weird sort of way? And I can so here, okay, fine. Here you go. I can give two different perspectives on this. First one, easier one, I think easier one is the Christian religious perspective. Christianity, and given all the recent news and stuff that are people are talking about right now with Trump and borders and immigration and asylum and all that stuff.
an allegedly satanic Olympic
No,
ceremonies.
let's not, please don't. We should have talked about that.
That's what we could have talked about. Oh man, we could have gone there.
I've tried to stay away from that video as much as possible, but I can't not.
Yeah, it wouldn't do you any good. It's kind of a drag.
Well, maybe I can transport myself somewhere else. Die on that.
We should plug that upcoming conversation too. We've got an update on that when we get to the updates.
Yeah, we'll plug that one. That'll be a good one. The part of the reason I think that I'll just come out and say it. Whenever anything sort of Islamic or Muslim perpetrator kind of stuff happens, the reason there's this extra vitriol from sort of the right wing, the Christian side, it's not just because that it's another major world religion that does not seem to be getting the same personal scrutiny that people feel like. But it's, I think, because at their core, Islam and Christianity are the only two, we've said it before, proselytizing religions. Those are the only two religions where they explicitly tell their followers, you have to go out and convert people. Part of your mission is to bring more people into the faith as you can. No other, you never meet, no Hindu person is coming up knocking on your door and saying, have you talked about Brahma? Have you thought about Brahma today? It's always some sort of Christian sect, not just Latter-day Saints. Or there's the Muslims. And I mean, there's a reason the Crusades are such a big thing, and the Holy Wars and all that stuff too are such a big thing, because those are the two religions that do that. So from a religious perspective, if your legacy does not leave your family at all, at least in the Christian perspective, you could argue that you did not do enough. You were not part of your community, really. You were not affecting other people in your community. You were not helping out with your church. You were not helping out with your child's school. Like if the only people who remember you at all are just your wife and your kids, then maybe you actually weren't doing enough and your legacy sucks now. From a non-religious perspective, since we talked about how much I can't compute existence if you're an atheist.
Oh, that was one of my favorite talks, actually. That one was really enjoyable.
Hey, spoiler alert, I still don't get it.
Again, stubborn as a mule.
But in my head, if there is nothing else after this, then you should be going for as much freaking legacy as possible, because that is literally all that's left of you after you're dead. So if you care about actually having any sort of footprint in the world, you're making as many footprints as you can before you kick the bucket. So I think there's perfectly valid, I won't say sound, where it's like realistically correct, but I think there's perfectly logically valid arguments for shooting for larger legacy.
I think so too. Interesting you went to the, I shouldn't say interesting, predictable that you went to the religious aspect
That's
of it.
even
It makes
more
perfect
insulting.
sense. It makes, well, it's something I should have seen coming, and I didn't see you going there, and I should have. I don't mean it in an insulting way. I mean that knowing that is a huge tenet and core of who you are, I should have realized that was going to be one of the dominant influences in how you define your legacy, and it makes perfect sense. So I wasn't trying to be insulting. I just, I should have
You
seen that
called
one
me
coming.
predictable.
Well, yeah, deal with it. We're human beings. We have actions, and most of them are based on learned responses to stimuli. We are predictable in some way. Interesting. So if you're going to summarize what your legacy, what you wanted your legacy to be in one sentence, give me your hopeful one sentence legacy.
I will give you that in 1 second, because this is a perfect time to try to emphasize one of my puzzle pieces. You talked about that in earlier episodes, your puzzle pieces about getting to know you, and I like that phrase. I very often spin things religiously / spiritually on different viewpoints. I at least give that side of things. It is partially based on the fact that I was raised in a Catholic household, but it's really the philosopher in me. Having gone to private Catholic schools basically my whole life, and then having, majored in, I mean, philosophy is basically like, this is gonna water it down too much, but it's sort of just thinking, what do things mean and why?
I think it's questioning, right? I would say it's questioning,
kind of,
and pursuing that question down the rabbit hole.
I should make that its own little odd about what philosophy really is, because most people don't really understand what like, they just think, oh, you just sit around questioning shit all day, and like that's super easy.
When you ask most people what philosophy is, they can't even figure it out.
Right. Oh, exactly. It's its own little Nietzsche.
Nice. I'm so happy we can have this report. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry. Continue.
Being in that environment where there's a lot of Christian / Catholic, what's the word I'm looking for? Leaning or influence or whatever. When I was sort of going through my training with my education, I was very conscious of trying to make sure I could speak completely outside of that. And so my natural reaction to breaking down an issue is to say, what does a person think about this religiously? And then what does a non-religious person think about this? How would I argue this? Because classic, you're in a debate and someone goes, oh, well, you just do it because your faith says so. I wanted to be able to say, no, here's why I can do it without my faith. Here's why I can do it without any religious precepts. So that's why I often break it down, because I want to show that I think there's valid arguments that have nothing to do with, it's essentially a way to in my mind, be persuasive to someone who doesn't hold the same religious concepts as you do. That's really why I do it. So yes, I do often go that route, but a lot of it is because I'm very consciously trying to, in a way, not be me, if that makes sense. So, legacy in one sentence, you said?
Yeah, legacy in one sentence.
This might be the hardest question you've ever asked me.
Oh, wow. I like that. I like that I'm reaching new heights.
Well, I gotta see if I'm allowed to semicolon something in here. Counts as
I
one
mean, the
sentence.
letter of the law says you can. I'm looking more for the spirit of the law, but the
Because
letter
it's
of the
two
law
separate
says that's
sentences
okay.
that are related, and so you just do.
If you make one of them a dependent clause, I think you're okay. You just got to make
Yeah.
sure you work that. This is almost a what do you want on
I
your
mean,
tombstone question. Like it's almost that, but it's just a little bit more meaningful, I think.
yeah, I was gonna say this is part of my legacy is what goes on my tombstone. It's like the legacy is bigger than the tombstone, than the epitaph for your word of the day out there. Um, I
Which is not the
think
same as an epithet.
I think my legacy for me personally, purely selfishly, ask Doug, is to prepare my children to engage the world better than I can.
Okay. That's a very dad legacy. I like that.
Yeah, and it wasn't meant to be that way. I really was trying to be honest. I'm not. You hear stuff like, and I can explain behind why I say it that way. People always want to talk about creating a better life for their kids than they had, or giving more wealth or resources or comfort or luxury or whatever than they had to their kids. But my job is not to give my kids things except for skills and perspectives and motivations. My job
And
is to prepare,
confidence.
right? My job is to prepare my children so that whatever they end up wanting to do, I have done as much as I can to help them do that. And at the end of the day, that involves engaging with the world. So even if I don't even have to teach them stuff. If I just somehow guide them in a way to where they can teach themselves what they need to know, that's my job. So whatever I can do to best help them engage with the world better than I was, that is what will make them successful. That will help them achieve their version of success.
I like that. It actually reminds me of one of my favorite Bluey lines because everything goes back to Bluey.
Everything does.
In the chess episode where Bandit wants to teach Bluey to play chess. Um, it's very important to him that he teaches her to use the right names and the right moves and to set things up right and to play well. And Chili and her wisdom, essentially explains to him that he's being a butthead and it's not important to get your kid to be good at chess per se. And why do you want your kid to be good at chess? And they have this really interesting back and forth. And at the end of it, she teaches him like what I consider one of the top three lessons you'll learn from the entire three seasons of Bluey. And she says, focus on the heart, not the head. Focus on shaping their hearts right now. You don't focus on filling their heads with knowledge and training them and teaching them things. You should be focusing on teaching them to be good and on teaching them how to think and how to interact and how to be. And that was kind of the message I took from that. And that's, you got a little chili in you right there. I like
I'm the wife.
that. Yeah, yeah. But the wise wife, which I think we all know is
Yeah.
generally accurate.
It's actually funny you say that because what really got me engaged in philosophy, really, in college was my intro to philosophy teacher. And I came to find out that that dude, personally, he and I hold extremely different viewpoints on lots of things. And part of the reason he interested me so much was because he was one of the first people that I had met in my life, adult or otherwise, who took every single thing I could possibly argue and like struck it down immediately. He was just so well versed and well,
Yeah.
regarded in on all subjects that like I could talk to my peers all day and I could at least paint myself into a corner where logically you couldn't get me out. But he just kept like ripping the rug right out of me. But he also eventually said towards the end of the class, he finally was willing. He spent the entire class talking about, what your faith would say and why they would say it, or what you would say, and challenging us to do it. And he never once said his own personal views. And then, like, the last 2 weeks or 3 weeks, he showed some of his papers that he was working on, and he kind of like let in all the views he had. And we were surprised because a lot of it was not the same as a lot of us in the class. And he basically said, my job is to teach you philosophical concepts. My job is to teach you how to engage arguments and break things down logically, or, and find things that are valid and invalid so that you can make these decisions for yourself. And I was like, holy shit, this is like the coolest dude ever.
Yeah.
So he focused on our heads, but he focused on it from a perspective of like, I'm not going to teach you what to say. I'm going to teach you how to figure out what you want to say.
I
So it
like
was
that. That's a
fun.
good teacher. That's a
Yeah,
really
he
good
was he
college
was a
level
great
teacher right
he
there.
was a great teacher. I should email him.
You should. You should. Tell
I
him you get a podcast and
was
tell him
gonna
you're
say
talking about him in the
I was
podcast.
gonna say I haven't talked to him in I don't even know a decade or something.
Yeah, shoot him an
Anyway,
email, tell him about the podcast, and
yeah.
I'd be very curious if we could bring him on. I'd be happy to have him
I
on.
don't know. I'll give him a shout out too for all I care. His name is
Yeah.
Thad Botham. I think I can't remember how he pronounces it, but he was a final year grad student when he taught me, and then he was at Arizona State last I heard. So full
Reach out.
professor. So yeah,
Botham, Bothom.
Botham.
Yeah.
I
So
think it was Botham.
my sister-in-law
Yeah.
married a man whose last name was Bottoms,
Oh,
which
really?
I mean to me sounds like a perfect name for he's a great guy and he's a very manly man guy. He was
That's
an
the
army
tops.
guy and he was yeah.
As the kids say.
He's the tops, but he's a very man's man kind of guy. But I hear the name Bottoms, and I'm like, oh, that'd be a great name, like great last name for a Hobbit. That's just what I think. And he's the
It
furthest thing
would
from a
be.
Hobbit. Yeah,
You're right.
it would. But he's the furthest thing from a Hobbit. Well, her name is Catherine, so she's now Catherine Bottoms, or as she
Kathy Bottoms.
hates when we say no, worse, Cat Bottoms.
Oh, of course.
She
That's
hates
not
it.
even that's not even that bad though.
Oh, she despises it. And the first time I realized it, I didn't realize she hated it so much. I was like, oh, you're cat bottoms. And she got so mad and she was not happy. And this is I love this sister-in-law. She's fantastic. She introduced me to quite a few different shows and comedians. And she gets me in kind of a weird way that not a lot of people do. But good person. I love her to death, love Trey to death. But yeah, cat bottoms. It's an unfortunate name.
There are more unfortunate names.
Oh, there are. There are. Cool. So we had an impromptu conversation, covered legacy
Yay.
pretty well. I feel like we did a decent job getting something on the cast episode.
And it was more than
to
20
say.
minutes.
And it was more than 20 minutes. And I say yay us. Good job us. I'm proud of us. I'm proud of you.
Why?
Why not?
That's the philosophy answer, right?
Yeah, that is the philosophy answer. That's how I finally got my daughter who loves to every once in a while just, hey daddy, why is the sun warm? And I'll answer, and then she'll say why, and I'll answer, and she'll say why, and it leads us down that rabbit hole. And eventually, after about 7 or 8 questions, I start saying why not, and she gets so mad just because I just fire back every time. That's how
just
you
like
defeat the 8-year-old.
Animaniacs and Miranda, or whatever that little girl's name was, with Buttons, the dog that always got her out of trouble.
What was her name?
This is a random reference. Do you remember this?
I do.
The sideshow of Animaniacs, Buttons.
Yep.
I want to say her name was
I'll bet you I still know
Miranda.
most of the Animaniacs theme song.
You probably could do it.
They're tiny, they're toony, they're all a little loony,
ability.
and in this
Yeah.
cartoony, they're invading your
my
TV with comic
Ridiculous.
dispensers. We cracked up all the sensors with Tiny Toon Adventures. It's a dose of comedy. So
Here's Acme Acres, something.
A whole wide world of fun. Yeah. Something.
I just always remember, hey lady, it's mom. Call me mom. Okay, lady, I love you. Bye-bye.
Elmira with all the animals.
Yeah.
Goodness.
Remember, Yakko spelled backwards is okay.
Oh, that's a great cartoon that wouldn't fly today.
I saw an episode. This is just sorry. I know I'm on a tangent, but I can't even remember what episode it was. I think it was the one with the guy who was trying to get them to do some sort of like film thing or artsy thing, and they just like completely messed with him. Like, did you know you have PP on your? Oh, it was Pablo Picasso. It's like, did you know you have PP on your smock? And they go, ew. Like that was a line in there. There's little one-liners in those episodes where you're like, oh my god. I watched this as a kid and I did not understand half of it.
I love seeing those memes now as an adult. I love when one of those pops up somewhere. I'm like, oh, that was great. You're right. But Pinky and the Brain, freaking classic. I love.
They were
Pinky
probably way more clever than I even remember.
Oh, I'm sure
for all the stuff they did.
I'm sure most of those jokes went over my head.
I still remember the courtroom scene where it shows "Stop badgering the witness," and it pans over to Yakko, and he's got a snarling badger in the guy's face, and he looks and throws it away, and then he takes a goat or a ram. And he goes, "Okay, what are you doing now?" And he goes, "Goading the witness." saying. I still remember a lot of state capitals thanks to
Yeah, that song.
Wacko's song.
Yep, that one, and then
Thanks
the
for that.
Modern Major General. I remember that
Mhm.
song very well. That was a fun
Yeah,
one.
that's good. That's good.
What a good cartoon. Are we doing top threes or drafts or anything?
I
Dad
don't know.
jokes, or we're just gonna
Because
jump
we
to
were
picks?
so prepared tonight. We totally have a top 3 lined up
I
too.
mean, we talked about. We did mention like superheroes and superpowers, and yeah, we can save that.
I
when
could
we
do
flesh it out
superpowers.
more.
I could do superpowers. I've thought way too much about superpowers.
I have two. With Deadpool and Wolverine coming out this past week, which was awesome, and everybody
Yeah.
should go see that movie.
I saw a meme where someone put Ace Ventura with the devil horns instead of Wolverine's face. It's really funny.
That sounds pretty funny. That might be good.
It's really good. Okay, yeah. You can go first. So wait, are we gonna do? We should do. It has to be a draft. Like if you say what mine is, I have to come up with another one. Obviously.
Okay, yeah, I hadn't thought about it that way, but yeah, I guess we can just draft the superpowers of heroes. Do we want them to be like specifically tied to heroes, like to characters, or we just want the ability?
I think we should go with ability. Because come on, the superheroes don't even know what they're doing. They don't even use them right sometimes, which is the impetus for a lot of the issues.
That's true. All right, we'll just draft superpowers.
Yeah,
Simple.
draft. Do your like top, just your favorite 2 or 3, and
Who's
then we
going
can
first?
we can honorable mention maybe one that we think is stupid
Okay.
or less useful or something like that. You
Sure.
go first. I like a challenge.
I'm gonna go with the superpower that I would take if I was not being a selfish a-hole. The best superpower I could possibly, the one I've always said I would want would be teleportation. I've always stood by the fact that that's the best superpower. It's the one I want.
It is
And
the best superpower.
I will
Son
argue
of
with
a
anybody
bitch.
who says it's not the best one.
I gotta
'cause it
come
just
up with a
is.
different one now automatically. I thought I was gonna get one.
Nope, that's the best one by a mile. And I'm glad that
Why?
we agree on this
I want to hear why.
for all the reasons.
Okay.
One, I
Damn
love
it.
to travel. I love the idea of living in Bora Bora and working here and not dealing with a commute, just teleporting anywhere I wanted to go, or not even working. I could just be like the world's greatest, most profitable courier. Like it'd be great. But I love the idea of just being able to be anywhere in the blink of an eye, just be there. That's fantastic. People who want to fly, just give me teleportation. I will gladly just teleport up into the sky and just allow myself to free fall because that's the fun part of jumping out of a plane anyway. And then before you hit the ground, you just teleport back up and you get the bird's eye view, you get the beauty of it, and you get to free fall indefinitely without the boring part where you have to fly up in an airplane and wait to jump. All kinds of trickery and shenanigans and nonsense and tomfoolery and malarkey and all that stuff I would love to be involved in with teleportation. There's literally not anything that I want to do that teleportation wouldn't allow me to do better. It'd be great.
I agree. Teleportation. I've thought a lot about this. So there was the first like movie with it was one of the Wolverine Origins movie where they put in the first
with Wade
Deadpool.
Wilson and the really awful version of
the really awful one. But they had the guy, the like black cowboy or whatever, who had the teleportation power, and he was fighting Sabretooth, what's his face, and got bested. And this is why it always bothered me because he bested him because he said you're predictable, and he like put his hand on his spine where he appeared.
Yep.
And I was like, well, if he was actually a decent fighter with teleportation, he would just be like teleporting and grabbing stuff and throwing it at him. He wouldn't be going for like punches and stuff. But then also, to make that kill work, it assumes that when he teleports in, Sabretooth's hand takes precedence.
Right. Over his mass. Yeah.
Over his mass and like displaces his mass. And that's why he's able to get his spine. But we don't actually know how other dimensions or upper dimensions work. So if he teleports in, is he actually coming in from nothing and expanding? So wouldn't he like explode his forearm? Like that's a perfectly possible reason too. So the whole like when people try to minimize teleportation, I always sit there and think, well, we don't actually know. You could kill somebody by just teleporting into them.
Yeah,
it could be crazy powerful for all we know with how it works.
I've nerded out on this even further than that actually, because the way Nightcrawler's teleportation works is he basically takes his mass and then a certain amount of other mass through this intradimensional portal and it pops out somewhere else. Like My favorite, my
Right.
favorite scene of his is when he kills Deadpool in the Age of Apocalypse comic book series. Nobody can kill Deadpool. They call him Dead Man Wade. His healing factor is just ridiculous. Nobody can kill him. There's a scene where someone's sword like passes through his neck to decapitate him, and it heals behind the sword as it's passing through. So it just,
It doesn't
but
matter. Yeah.
right, but Nightcrawler can carry a certain amount of mass with him. So he pops up on his back and grabs his head, and then teleports away with just his head and like leaves the rest of the
Right.
mass behind and then hides it in a cave somewhere on the opposite side of the planet, you know? And like that's just super cool. And it makes me think, well, what if when you're teleporting, like you can remap your DNA? Like, are you actually disassembling and reassembling your DNA when you do this?
Kind of
Because
like,
if
or is it like the Prestige where it's like a copy of you?
right.
You know.
Or is it that? But if
Yeah.
you're remapping your DNA, then I mean, you could just like memorize, get yourself perfectly fit and as healthy as you've ever been, and memorize that pattern for your DNA, and then never age. And every time you get fat or every time you get injured, you just blink and remap yourself to what you were healthy and reorganize your molecules to a healthier you again.
Right.
Like there's all kinds of weird, neat stuff that depending on how the teleportation works.
Well, and even
And I
just
just
silly
love the
stuff
concept.
too. Like you don't even like because in the movies, in the X-Men movies, when they kind of water him down, Nightcrawler down to a little bit, and he goes, "Well, I have to see where I'm going." And like, okay, that's sort of a limitation, I guess, that could happen if you had it in the real world. But even then, I still want that because, like you said, with flying, I just need to. If I just teleport up into the sky and then I look where I'm teleporting next,
Yep.
and as long as I have 0.2 seconds of human reaction time, I can get out of whatever scrape.
Yeah.
And if it's more like Looper or Jumper, excuse me, Jumper with Hayden
Jumper.
Christensen, where you can go anywhere you've already been,
Yeah.
then that's even wider. So yes, invisibility. Teleportation is clearly the best.
Man, we actually agree on crap tonight. That's weird. And can I note that I find it hilarious that we got way more passionate about teleportation than we did about legacy.
Clearly.
We definitely just had way more excitement talking about teleportation.
Well, let's see. What have we thought about more, our legacy or having superpower?
Yeah, that's not even close.
Okay, well then my next one that I would really, really like, and there is a qualifier here, is telekinetic powers, psychic powers, Jean Grey kind of style.
Like all of them, like or because telepathy and telekinesis are different.
Well,
So
okay,
I mean,
fair.
do we just want like all of them or
Telekinesis.
okay?
If we're gonna be fair, I mean, to me, telepathy and telekinesis are two separate powers.
Right.
Really, they really are.
They are.
I mean, there's a huge amount of power in telepathy. I mean, like this is a silly example, but if you've ever seen What Women Want with Mel Brooks,
Yeah.
that displays the amount of
Mel
power.
Brooks?
Mel Gibson?
That would be a very different
Although
movie.
sorry. Mel Brooks with What Women Want would be way funnier.
I would watch the crap out of that movie. And I like the one with Mel Gibson. I thought it was great.
But with Mel Gibson,
Oh,
yeah.
man.
But I'm sorry, Mel Gibson, Jesus, the other Mel. But that shows you how powerful, like, essentially telepathy could be, knowing
Yeah.
people's thoughts and understanding that. But the telekinesis, specifically moving stuff with your mind, I think that's the one that actually can impact more. Like that's the actual, that's a force, an unstoppable force, because it doesn't matter what someone thinks, you can do whatever you want. You can move them, you can move their stuff. I mean, let's face it, if someone cuts me off on the road, I would love to be able to be like, boop, and just pick their car up and throw it off to the side of the road. And I wouldn't even have to hurt them and roll it over. I would just place it on the side of the road. They'd be like, what the hell just happened to me?
Yeah.
You
I'd
just
never
keep
lose
you
a
on your toes.
basketball game ever again. Just subtly push a ball out of someone's hand a little bit while they're dribbling. You nudge one off so it doesn't go in. You guide it into the
Shoot
hoop.
from half court.
Yeah.
Just be like, oh, that's going in this time.
Yeah. All right.
Or
Telekinesis.
you know
I can
what?
get on board with that.
Hey, guess what? I can dunk now. And just like I'm not calling this flight. It's not really flight, but if you can move other people's bodies, you should be able to at least sort of like elevate yourself up a little bit, like, a little bit of like magnetic force underneath you of some kind or something. I mean, it's kind of, I feel like if you have telekinesis, you should be able to effectively fly, probably.
As long as it's strong enough to move your own amount of mass, then I would think
right,
so.
and
right?
that's where this is why I've thought about this too much too, because what if you had telekinesis, right? Like how great would that be when you see the TV remote over there, you don't have to get up and go get it. You
That seems like the worst possible application for this.
I'm sorry, you said best, correct? You said
No. That's what children are for. Hey, the remote's over there. Go get that for me. You don't need telekinesis for that.
Part of my legacy is not asking my child for stupid things. I can do it myself. Thank you very much. But what if it's like every other strength or ability? Like, so if you want to be able to lift 200 pounds with your arms, you might have to train, right? So what if you want to lift 200 pounds with your brain? Do you have to train?
And take your fish oil.
Right. But I mean, what is telekinesis really? Are you taking some aura around yourself and pushing it out and like wrapping it around stuff and lifting it then? Like, what are you doing? Yeah. People assume it's just some random like, oh yeah, I can lift shit. But in all the movies, one of the roadblocks is always, well, I don't know if I can lift that because it's so big. And it's like, but it's just weight. Like you're not doing weight. You're just doing volume, right? Maybe volume's the problem. So can you train yourself to lift more volume? I don't know. But I still like the idea, if only for the remote. I still like teleportation. Teleportation's still my favorite, so I'm sad you took it from me. But I'll take telekinesis. Okay. Yeah.
All right, my second draft pick. I'm going to go the selfish, non-sexy route. This is the very real life answer. If I could have anything, I would probably take this one. And that's just a Wolverine style healing factor, because living with chronic pain is miserable and sucks and affects a lot of different things. And I finally reached a point where I would just love to be without that. It'd be great. So perfectly, if I really had a choice to gain any of these superpowers, if I was in an even slightly selfish mode at all, I would take a healing factor.
Even though it allows you to live for borderline forever and see all your loved ones die.
That would be unfortunate, but it is.
Kids, let's talk about legacy. You better leave me a good one because you're going first.
Well, I mean, my legacy is that I want to be known as someone who was, willing to sacrifice to leave the world better than he found it. And if I'm living forever, that gives me more time to improve the world and make things better for people. And I'm good with that.
Yeah, just make a bunch of Tom babies with each generation. Make sure you train them up right. That'll really leave an impact.
Yes, it would.
Okay.
No, I would just like to.
I mean, that would be cool too. It would be cool too, just because of think about all the stuff you could do. There's so much more time for activities.
Well, just to be pain free and to always be healthy, and that sounds really lovely when you're dealing with high levels of pain, kind of every minute of every day, and it just becomes very tempting. That's all.
You just turned this really depressing.
I did. I'm sorry about that.
Superpowers.
I'll come up with something more fun for the
It's like that. It's like that fake letter that was circling around on the internet that said, "Dear Santa, please make the bleeding stop," with all the red spots on it. You're like, "Oh, I would love the superpower." You haven't seen that? Oh, it's years old.
Oh, I can't wait till we do a Christmas special. I want that
God. There. It's just so messed up. You're just like, "Oh, I would just love the superpower so the pain stops."
Well, yeah, that's where I'm gonna go with my second power. Give me a super healing factor, not Deadpool's, but okay. Like Wolverine's. I don't want one where I'm regenerating dead tissue. That's not what I want. So
no, Wolverine still lived a long time. I mean, bullet to the head still comes back. Mm-hmm. I have sort of a tie for my number 2 and number 3 now, since you again took it from me. I think I would prefer. I don't know what exactly you would call it. It's the Shadow Cat, the ability to pass through /
like phasing through things.
Yeah, I was gonna say she doesn't really pass through things, though. She almost like connect. She can almost like engage and disengage with other objects, with other realities, because she doesn't just like. They show her falling through floors, but she also does the thing where she like rises up out of the ground and stuff. Is kind of her ability. So she, and she can take other people with her and kind of extend the power with her. So she's not really just like making herself nothing. She's really. It's almost like flight as long as there's matter. It's kind of what she can do. I always thought that would be cool, partly because if someone tries to attack you, you can just let it go through you, no problem. Just make sure your shoes stay solid, and the rest of you is literally untouchable unless you don't want it to be. But then also you could. I mean, you want to talk about stealth? You want to talk about? I mean, literally anything. Break into anything, break out of anything, help someone else break into or out of anything. just avoid harm, whatever. I mean, like go see what's up. I wonder what's happening in there. I'll go look. I mean, like she must be able to see where she's going even before she's visible, right? Because you don't just want to come up out of the ground like a sewer and be like, "Where the fuck am I?" Like with just your head. So
Yeah.
she seems to control where she comes up at certain times when she does stuff. So I feel like you should be able to at least can sort of see out through matter in various spots. So you could also just take a peek on stuff.
All right. Yeah, you can have that one. I have no interest in that one. You can have that one without.
But see, here's why. Here's why. You ready for this? Other stuff. I'll just use it's just easy to convey this point this way. Radar
Mhm.
or security cameras. If you're able to assimilate and move through other matter, like walls and stuff like that, you should be rendered invisible to things like that because you can literally move through the ground to where whatever camera or radar or whatever is bouncing off of that. And so you're literally undetectable if you want to be. Or at the very least, you can walk right up. And if you make your atoms or whatever, not touchable, maybe you appear visually, but stuff like radar or pinging or whatever like that doesn't affect you then that way too, right? It should, because that has to bounce. It's like an echolocation thing. It has to bounce off of you to come back. So you can use it for a whole lot more than just movement.
Yeah, but none of that's anything I really care about doing. None of
Okay,
that
fine.
interests me. So you can have
Okay.
that one. That one's all you.
Thank you. I'm just
Including
going to shit on your
teleportation.
next one now. I'm just going to make sure.
That's fine. My next one is I'm torn for my next one between what I really want from like a comic book character that I really like, and then one that just one of those things you think about all the time and play this game with friends, like you come up with some random stuff on your own. I'm torn between that and the other one, but I'm gonna leave my own random creative crazy more adult one off to the side. And I would go with like Domino's ability to affect luck around me and just generate good luck and have things be generally lucky, like affecting the luck probabilities of everything that I do and everything around me. I would like that. I would like to just be lucky kind of all the time in the most random and chaotic ways. That would be really fun.
Okay. That's stupid.
Sure.
And not just because I said I was going to shit on it, but because there's some situations where it doesn't matter. You can't be lucky.
You don't know Domino very well then, because that girl is lucky in every situation.
I do know the character. I mean, but see, that's not a superpower though.
It is. That's the whole argument with her in Deadpool too. And if you read up on her, she affects the probability field of luck around her.
But how is it an actual super? Like, there's no. But
she emanates sort of an aura around herself that affects probability.
Right, but is that really a superpower? If it's because okay, I am only really a movie guy. I'm not a comics book, like an actual like books guy.
Yeah.
So I will defer to your stupid expertise on this in my mind. Since I have to shit on it, I have to call your expertise stupid.
Yeah.
Is this a passive power where it's just who she is, or is it active, like she can turn it on or off, or she can like could she project this onto other people, like I will make you lucky for the next day?
No, this affects her. Okay. It's the X
so
gene in her
passive.
Body. It's the mutant gene in her body, the X gene, and it just randomly affects the probability field within a certain range of her for the best possible outcome for her as like a self-protective mechanism.
It just doesn't even feel like a super. I mean,
it's cool. A lot like Colossus having impenetrable steel skin.
No, but he can turn that on and off.
He can.
And I was going to say that was actually going to be my third one, because when I was younger, I really, really liked Colossus just because he was basically indestructible, impenetrable when he wanted to be. So he wasn't really invincible, but he could more or less be if he wanted to be.
Okay,
and
so it's more
extra
like
heavy and extra strong and all that.
So it's more like Rogue. If she touches somebody, her body steals their life force, their memories, their abilities. It's more like that. It's a passive ability like that, like Rogue.
Well, we should just talk about this tonight. It's not though.
It is.
Rogue, if she has the contact, it happens, but she also has she also takes powers of its other mutants and can use them. There is something at least semi-active about her power.
No, those are all side effects of her power. That's all something that happens after the fact. Her power isn't other mutants' abilities. Her power
But
is
her
essentially absorbing their life essence.
But her power is to be able to, but she also can absorb other abilities. So
She can, yes.
if she can
But
get
that's a
close
side
enough,
effect of her power. It's she doesn't just absorb their abilities. She absorbs their memories, their cognitive thoughts, their actual life force, their well-being. Like she leaves them in a coma. Like that's what happens when she touches somebody. She
well,
absorbs it all. If there happens to be an X gene mutation in there, she gets that along with it.
but
But that's not her
she doesn't put
power.
them in a coma from like a single touch, right? She has to hold on a little bit,
Depends on their constitution
sort
and
of.
how
Okay,
strict they
right. But
are.
that's,
Yeah.
I mean, there's okay. You make a compelling point. Like the basis for her power is essentially passive, but she has some agency with it in that she can pick out a target and say, I need to touch this person to incapacitate them slash I can then use their power to do something else. Like she could make
Sure.
decisions like that. Domino is lucky. So, and again, this is why I'm deferring to your comic bookness. Can Domino run into a situation being like, I know I won't die because I'm lucky? Or can she just run into a situation being like, well, I have the best chance to get this done because I'm me?
It's essentially the first one because it's so powerful. She's never run into a situation
Okay.
she couldn't escape with the luck.
Okay.
And in
But
order for that to work, the way it tends to shape itself is that while it's affecting things to be probably lucky for her, it often is affecting the probability around other people to make them unlucky if they have an adverse goal. So as lucky as she's getting, if she gets into a fight with,
that seems like
say,
two
Colossus,
superpowers now. Oh, if you're attacking me, you're
well, it's
unlucky.
it's
And
shifting
also
the
I'm super
odds, and in
lucky.
order to adjust those odds, I mean, this is what happens
Well,
when
yeah.
someone's odds go up, someone else's odds go down. If we're playing King Queen of clubs and 10 Jack or Ace Jack of spades heads up in a poker hand, you're a 60-40 favorite against me with Ace Jack. But if the flop comes with two clubs, well, now it's very different, and my odds have
Right.
changed. And as mine go up, yours go down.
Yeah,
And so it's one of those things. It's
but
the
it's
way
just
it works
odds.
there.
You can still lose.
Sure, you can, but hers don't let her. They shift to the point where it works out. Like it's actually just it's gonna be she shifts to 100%. It's crazy.
Hmm.
She's fun. She's a fun character, and I thought
I mean,
actually in
like
Deadpool 2 they did a great job
it's
of kind of
they
showing it, which was neat. Like it's
that
that's a
I was
hard
gonna
thing to
say
visualize.
it is. The concept is cool. And they did, and you're right. In Deadpool 2, they did a fantastic job of showing it was they were very clever with it. That there was there are some people that did not get the credit they deserve for being able to show how that would actually look in real life in combat situations too. But
And I love that they had the argument where Deadpool took your side and was like, luck is not a superpower. And she said, but it is. But it's not. Well, except that it is. Like they had this argument during her tryout, her audition. And that was a fantastic scene. Like it was great. And they kept it going with a callback throughout the
but
movie.
the
It
only
was really
reason it
good.
worked because he was just like, whatever, you'll die anyway. And then she like didn't.
And then she was the only one
And
that
then she was
didn't. Right.
the only one that didn't. Yeah.
She was the only one that could survive his incompetence, which is brilliant. And it was good.
I know. I mean, like, I guess I kind of have to give it to you just because it's in the realm of superpowers as established by our previous comic book overlords. It just feels so. It doesn't feel superpower. It just it feels like an ability, but not a power. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense.
So yeah, okay, great. Well, my third one is Colossus because
Because you
childhood.
want to be big and hard all the time?
Yes, well, I am actually down boy. The I
That
just
goes
thought
into
it
the
was,
superpower I almost picked, by the way.
yeah,
So now I probably have to
I
mention
thought
my
it was
honorable
cool to
mention.
be strong and make yourself
Yeah.
borderline indestructible kind of whenever you wanted. And also like too, because and they display it really well in the X-Men movies, is that when he does change some of his physiology. He isn't just strong when he I guess metallicizes. He also
Sure.
his chemistry changes. He becomes much more weighty and much more heavy, and that allows him to do some other stuff too, to be sort of like a grounding point. Part of me wants to take back this choice and go with Gambit.
He's one of my
Because
favorite characters.
I
His ability isn't
freaking
one I would pick, but he's one of my
like
all-time
that's what I mean. Like
favorites.
when I was younger, I thought Gambit was so freaking cool to be able to just like inject energy into anything. It sort of reminds me of the new Zelda games, the Breath of the Wild and whatever that's coming out here. I only played the first one, but when you can you can freeze an object for a second and build up energy in it to launch
Like a
it, whatever.
stasis effect. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what Gambit is. He can that's why he carries the cards around, because he turns cards into basically like a magazine of 52 like
Yep.
pulverizing bullets.
Yep.
Rubber bullets, basically. How cool would that? I mean,
They're exploding bullets. They're way more than that. They're pure kinetic energy.
They did a half decent job of showing how he transferred that, of how he could use that in the Wolverine origin story, where he uses it with his like staff to launch himself places and travel that way too.
Yeah. I thought that was really cool. Really well done.
How cool would it be to be able to transfer energy into anything, not just as a weapon, but like I said, just transport. So I thought that was pretty cool. But I'll go with Colossus, because there's just, have you noticed that all of my choices are about being untouchable or indestructible?
Or indestructible. Yeah. You want to be a warrior is what you want to be. And I guess I can respect that.
I mean, that's why I maintain this physique, this warrior
I want
physique.
want to have fun with mine or be healthy, and you want to go and destroy people.
Yeah,
and I can respect that.
Like, oh, healing lucky son of a bitch.
That can teleport. Yep. I could teleport to a casino in the southern coast of France.
You took teleportation from me. In my mind, teleportation is part of the being untouchable thing. Teleportation is the ultimate. There's nothing better than that.
Agreed, 100%.
Yeah.
Except possibly my my honorable mention, which I will say now because it ties into you being big and hard all the time. Hey everyone, this is Tom, just talking a little bit about an editorial choice we made about this part of the podcast. My honorable mention superpower turns out was just a little bit well, it's a little too raucous for general consumption. So what we did was we edited that section out to keep our cast a little bit more general public friendly. And we've taken that snippet out. It's about a 10-minute chunk of me talking about, we'll just say graphic humor superpower. And we've taken that out and made it available on Patreon as part of the raw, unedited footage bonus that our subscribers are going to get there. So I'm sorry to put part of this behind a paywall on you guys. If you are a Patreon subscriber already, thank you for your patronage. And you can find this clip on Patreon. In fact, you probably found it before the episode released. And if not, you are more than welcome. In fact, we would love if you would join us on Patreon. For about $3 a month, you can buy us a cup of coffee and help us pay for production costs, and also get access to this and a lot of other Patreon-specific content that I think you'll enjoy, and Doug thinks you'll enjoy. So with that, if you want my take on the most climactic superpower of all time, and Doug's intercourse with that superpower, then by all means, join us on Patreon. If not, enjoy the rest of the episode. As always, thank you for listening. We appreciate you guys. Go, Dad, go. All right, give me a bad superpower. Give me one you wouldn't want.
Invisibility. Because I used to think it would be cool, but I gather that invisibility is literally just that. It's just invisible to the naked eye. Light refractions or cell manipulation or whatever else. So if you're invisible, you can't actually pass through anything. You still show up on any radar or heat sensor, or you still bump into people or whatever. Think like Harry with the invisible cloak. Yeah. Like, it's still potentially useful, but there's huge limitations to that. And theoretically, you could still get revealed, in a lot of cases. So I think that's one of the ones that is overrated. People think it'd be so cool, but really it's not. I mean, good example was in what's it called? Oh my God, this is such an old movie. Is it called I'm just gonna describe it to you because I can't remember. It was called it had like Ben Stiller and Kel Mitchell and William H. Macy in it, and they were kind of a raggedy band of vagabonds with crappy superpowers who teamed up to save the world. And Ben Stiller played a guy named he called himself Mr. Furious, where he got stronger the angrier he got, and he was kind of useless, but then he suddenly got angry and did really great. And Kel Mitchell, his superpower was that he was invisible, but only if nobody was looking at him. And William H. Macy was like the shoveler or something like that, where he was deadly with a shovel. And then there was one mysterious guy they recruited who
Mystery Men?
Yes, thank you, Mystery Men. The Sphinx, where he could he could like disassemble or disengage guns with his mind, and it only gets used once. And
That sounds awful.
it's one of those movies that's really stupid, but it's kind of funny when you watch it. That's the only use of invisibility is like Hill Mitchell is the guy who's invisible as long as no one's looking at him, and he's basically useless. But then there's one scene where they have to unlock a door and there's a security camera in the way, and he like tells everyone to look away from him, and then he strips down so that his clothes aren't seen. But then he turns invisible and like helps them, and then he goes, "I did it," and he goes, "I'm invisible. Can you see me?" And they all turn around and see him naked, and they're like, "You should put some pants on."
I haven't seen that movie. It's one I should look up.
To me, that's what invisibility is. Maybe you could beat like a security camera, but
Yeah, invisibility is
like
lame. I've always thought it was a stupidly
Yeah.
limited thing. I never
Yeah.
understood why anybody would ever choose that over really pretty much anything.
Like I get it, but I get why it could be useful, but it feels ultimately limited. Is
Yeah.
more than the other stuff. You can't repurpose it into better things, really.
Right.
So, yes.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, good. Good. Oh God, what's happening to me?
There it goes. 10 seconds.
10 seconds. All right, what's yours?
See, I was initially going to say any of them that you can't actually control because I wouldn't want like telepathy.
Like Scott
if I couldn't-
Summers.
Like Scott Summers, yeah, or even
Right,
like
like-
telepathy. I've often at a poker table been like, man, I wish I could just read this guy's mind. But if you couldn't turn that off, you would listen to everybody's thoughts at all the time. Like, holy shit,
Oh,
that's
these-
essentially
oh.
schizophrenia, right? Like, you don't want that.
Yeah, it is.
Same
and
thing
it would
with
be
super-
so loud in certain spots too.
Right.
Yeah.
Super strength, you'd be breaking everything that was delicate you didn't want to break and hurting people when you were just trying to be like anything I couldn't control.
Well,
But
disagree. I feel like super strength could also be the qualifier of like, well, it's a because you can control.
or my whole premise is you can't ones you can't control, things that you can't control. Like that's
Well,
the whole
right,
premise
but
of
that's
it.
right. I
think
feel like
anything you
super
can't
strength
control.
though, like if you were to allow for super strength as a superpower, that is controllable. It may be a little bit more difficult at times, but I mean, you can already control how harsh you are on a pretty broad range. So I feel like if you had more strength, you just
Well,
a little
counterpoint,
bit more
sure.
work.
But how have you ever like, forgotten your own strength and playing with one of your kids, roughhousing one of your kids, accidentally hurt your kid and been like, whoops, didn't mean to get you that hard, or didn't mean to throw you on the couch that hard, or like those slip ups happen even with my, very median
I mean, I
normal person
guess
strength.
I guess I could see something like that. I just feel like The Incredibles proved this for us. Mr. Incredible doesn't have to break everything unless he's mad. It's okay.
Yeah.
He's fine.
Oh, I actually have a joke about that. Oh, perfect. I've got a dad joke. Nice.
Damn it.
About that movie in particular.
Okay,
What a
good.
wonderful tie-in.
Okay,
I-
but you
I-
haven't actually said what you is overrated or that you don't want though.
Oh yeah.
Say it because I interrupted you.
No, yeah, I don't really have one in particular. I was thinking more of I was thinking more creatively about it. Like, what if you had immortality, but you
That'd be
had
the
like,
worst.
but you had like brittle bone syndrome, or you aged like a normal person and just never died. So like you were just always getting hurt, and there was you just had to live forever in
Yeah,
pain
though,
and
like
suffering.
you're like a pile of bones in a wheelchair, but you're
yeah,
still alive.
but you can't die, right? Like
Yeah.
Casca. Did you ever read the Casca books? Probably not.
No, there was something I read. It was a really fascinating thing. It was talking about what immortality really means, and it was a really well written little short. Like it was probably 25 lines or something, but it just said stuff like, you know, you met a wonderful woman, you married her, and you had three beautiful children. Then you watch her die, and then you watch them die, and it's still the very beginning of your life. And then you've watched three more world wars happen, and you've watched this happen, and the sun is starting to grow and get more red, and it's still the very beginning of your life. And it goes all the way to like the earth
Wow.
is finished and you're floating around in the void and nothing else. It's completely dark and completely quiet and silent, and it's still the very beginning of your life. And it was like meant to say like when you're truly immortal, like
Oof, yeah.
there's no end. And it was just like by the time you got to the end of it, you're like, oh my God, this is so fucking depressing.
Yeah.
It was very, very well written. So like, yeah, immortality would suck. And I've stuck by that for sure. Like if you cannot die, period, for any reason, awful. Totally awful. It'd be the worst kind of existence.
So the Casca series is one that was written back in the 70s, 80s maybe. And I had a neighbor who had literally a box full of these old books in his basement, and I read everything I could get my hands
1970s,
on.
if Tom's kids are listening to this.
Yes, the 1970s.
1970s.
And I read everything I get my hands on as a kid. Like if there was a magazine or a book or anything at all that I could read, I was reading it. And one day I just found this random Casca book, and it was like number 50 something in the series. And I was like, "Ooh, what's this?" And he like, no, little boy. Like, let me go get you number one, and got me the very first issue. The whole premise is that Casca Rufio Longinus, he was the Roman who was the one who stabbed Jesus with the spear on the cross. He's the one that impaled Jesus. And in Jesus is dying, not dying.
Talk about
Jesus
legacy.
right. And Jesus, when he did it, Jesus cursed him and said, you're a soldier and you're short-sighted, and you don't understand what I've been trying to teach people. So this is your curse, until I walk again, until I visit this world and I am again, you will remain what you are right now, a soldier. And he
Ooh,
essentially curses him with immortality. And not only that, but
immortal soldier.
he's called the right. He's the immortal mercenary is what I think they call him. And he
That.
lives a life as a soldier of fortune. It's a great series, and it goes all the way from literally the day of Jesus' crucifixion to present day. And you see him in all these lives. Like you see him in South America, where they see this foreigner wash up on their shores, and he's pale skinned and he's different. And they're like, yep, we're going to go ahead and sacrifice you to our gods. And they drag him up onto the altar and they cut the heart out of his chest and they're celebrating. And he like stands up and takes it out of their hands and puts it back in his chest and is like, no, 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 no. And then they worship him as Quetzalcoatl, their god.
Oh,
and
jeez.
and then there's an episode where he's a pirate. He's out in the open seas, and like he lives his life as a mercenary in every role he's in. In modern day, he's in special forces. He's a soldier in the Civil War, and he's a lot like Wolverine actually.
So it's and/or Quantum Leap, but just
Yes, but always in the soldier or the mercenary role, always. And it's
I was gonna
interesting
say
when
that might actually be a fate worse than death from a human perspective of like you're always around death and killing and destruction and everything like that for
until Jesus comes back.
you're like
until
the only
day of
person
return.
who's like you're the only person who's maybe rooting for the end of the world.
Yeah.
Basically.
And he can't have kids, and he can't have like a long-term family. Like if he settles down with someone too long, something tragic happens. And it's there's one I think it's when he's a frigateer, and his they realize they can't kill this guy, but they chain him to the deck of the ship and sink the ship. And he spends like 70 years on the bottom of the ocean drowning and then coming back to life and drowning again and coming back to life and drowning again. Like, yeah, it's a really interesting, really neat series. I mean, the problem
he's
is
Ganondorf. He just gets sealed in an evil realm for a while and then comes back.
Yep, there you go.
Exactly.
Yeah, they're not particularly original once you figure out how each story works. They're kind of all the same once you get there, but they're all very different periodic pieces and very interesting in that sense. There's some neat stuff that happens there because it spans all of time, and he travels the entire planet. He has to wander, and it's pretty neat.
This sounds awful. Yeah, I was gonna say that might be a literal fate worse than death.
Yep.
You would welcome death at some point if you had that.
So let's go ahead and just put immortality in there. I'll just go ahead and sign up for immortality. I want my healing factor to not quite include immortality.
Yeah.
I just want my life to be healthy. That's what I want. I want to be healthy and pain-free. It doesn't need to go forever. That's all right. All right. Dad jokes, updates. What do we got?
Let's do dad jokes first. I'm just gonna dig into one of my old past ones that has nothing to do with anything. I was lazy. I didn't look anything up. I just one that I've always loved, and it's pertinent because I've mentioned in the past that my parents used to bring us up to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan a lot, and one of our little trips in the last couple of months was to bring our kids up there. They had a great freaking time. Our oldest, I don't know if I mentioned it on any previous recording, probably not, but our oldest caught her first fish. Mm-hmm. And she's like super duper excited about it. I was talking about it for weeks afterwards. So it's a little bit up that alley because it's just wildlife related. So and I'll do it in a two first so I can warm you up. What do you call a cow with no legs? You should know
ground beef.
Yeah. What do you call a deer with no eyes?
A deer with no eyes?
Mm-hmm.
Blinder?
No idea.
Oh, yes, I have heard that one. Nice.
There you go.
Yep, I have heard that one. Oh, I can't let him remember that one. Good, 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 good. So mine is the one that you brought up. It has to
Oh
do
no.
with with the woman from that superhero family movie. I've always
Oh,
wondered.
Elastigirl or Helen.
Yeah, I've always wondered, what it would be like to have sex with her, and just figured it had to be fucking incredible.
Wait.
No,
No, I like where
because
you're
she
going
wasn't
with that,
incredible,
but
right? That's the name, right?
yeah, well, but really it's Mr. Incredible. So it's actually incredible to have
Isn't
sex with
that her
him.
last name? Aren't they the Incredibles?
Now it
Isn't that the
is.
whole
It's
premise?
borrowed though. He was Mr. Incredible. So
Sure,
really
but
it's
it's
it,
hers now.
it's incredible to have sex with him. And
Yeah,
your
I'll
and your
pass on that one.
and your favorite superpower is more up Dash's alley. Super fast.
Yeah, that would be way more fun than probably anyone else in that family other than Jack Jack.
Yeah.
Because I could sow chaos as Jack Jack. That'd be fun.
Well, I mean, he has multiple. He's got the beast and the fire and the interdimensional whatever teleportation stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I thought about super speed. Super speed. I don't like.
Yeah. I like
I
it,
mean, if
but
well,
it's
but
not. It doesn't rank with the ones that we chose in my
if
mind.
you're like Flash level super speed, where you can like beat security cameras and borderline travel the speed of light, like maybe.
Run backwards in time and yeah,
Yeah, like but and it's gotta be instantaneous. You gotta be able to go zero to light in like no time at all for it to be
yeah.
really useful. Otherwise, it's like invisibility. Eventually you get stuck because you can't go through stuff. Can you? I mean,
I don't. Well, he
like
could
if you
because he could
run
move faster than the molecules were moving, so he could technically pass
maybe so
through things if he got up to a high enough
it's
speed.
kind of
It's
like
kind of like
Shadow Cat.
Shadowcat, yeah.
Yeah.
But he had to reach a certain velocity for that. So
But that's what I mean. Like if you get hemmed in, you can't get out.
yeah,
You can't just like run through a overpass pillar.
right,
You just like
right.
splat. Like
It's
you're
not how
not
that
gonna
works.
win.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, I
exactly.
wouldn't want to be that. No.
Yeah, no, awful. They made a whole
No.
series about this awful superpower too. Ridiculous.
Hey,
Um.
if to risk upsetting some people, but I do it's
Oh,
one
I
more. I have
love
the
this.
superhero one that's it's going to upset some people, and it's a nice
Uh,
segue into our update.
okay.
If Caitlyn Jenner became a superhero, what kind of a superhero would Caitlyn Jenner be?
Is this a joke or are you just?
Yeah, no, it's a joke. It's a joke.
Uh,
That's not Doug's contemplative silence you're hearing. That's us being canceled because of this joke that you're hearing. That's why it's silent
Why not both?
right now.
I don't know. I don't know. I
She'd be either an X-Man
okay
or
or
a
a Y man.
Transformer.
Oh, nice. Okay, I was gonna say Y man. Okay, all right.
Got two punchlines.
Good punchlines. That was good.
Pretty soft.
I really like that. I
Not
really
too
like
not too
that.
inflammatory or too insensitive.
Hmm.
All right, updates. Speaking of
Speaking
updates,
speaking of Optimus Prime,
if those of you that have been with us for a while want to take a minute and remember back to the first truly polarizing episode we did, titled "What is a Woman Answered?"
yeah, for the record, like not that anything else was polarizing in any way, but this one actually got people.
Yeah, this one elicited some serious responses. And a friend of mine and someone that I know who's an extremely talented musician and a friend, certainly to the trans community and the LGBTQ community. Um, he kind of reached out to me and said, yeah, that episode was a little triggering, and you guys probably should have considered having someone else with a different perspective in there instead of just two people from the outside looking in and commenting on it. So what we're going to do is we are lining up an episode that's going to record here in about 2 weeks, unless there's a change, where we're going to get into it.
2 weeks from us right now.
2
Maybe
weeks
not
from us right now.
necessarily
Well,
when
it'll
you're
be
listening to this.
it'll be 2 weeks
Yeah,
from when they hear this.
I
I
don't
don't
know. Wait,
imagine we're going to bypass
this
the
is
episode
this is
order.
one of the ones that we'll try to get out quickly to keep it more, closer to the original source
That's
material and
true. We may
relevant. I
actually
mean,
put that one out before
if
this episode. That's true.
yeah, I mean, if we're being, what's the opposite of disingenuous?
Sincere,
Ingenuous? Genuous?
genuine, or sincere,
Yeah,
or
I like genuous better. But you're right,
all
genuine's
right.
probably the proper. If we're being sincere and genuous, we should have this one closer and closer out than some of the other stuff we're recording just to keep it,
Yeah.
level
fair.
playing field, another opportunity, and all that stuff.
So this won't really be an update. This will be a post date. By now, we've probably released the episode where we invited Big Lux and a member of the trans community and possibly another woman for just a woman's point of view. And we're going to talk about it a little bit more and make sure that we have voices coming into the arena from all sides. And that it's not just two middle-aged, cis, white, heterosexual males talking about, their views on what this is. So we're going to bring them in. We're going to have some voices heard and we're going to have a discussion. Yeah, we're time traveling. So you guys will probably hear that before you hear this. Just remember, we're bad time travelers and we're going to do our best with it. And we're
Very
looking
bad
forward
time
to having a
travelers.
really engaging conversation. I don't know who he's bringing on yet as a guest, but I do know Big Lux very well. He's an extremely talented musician. He's a very good person. He's involved politically in his hometown, and he's just a genuinely good guy. Yeah, it'll be an interesting talk. I'm excited.
Yeah, well, like I told Tom too, I've actually been hoping someday to meet him just for whatever reason. I'm like, well, this is going to be the first impression, so this is really like the worst way. Well, I mean, I can give just a little bit of a primer here too. You want to hear something that's kind of both religious and non-religious, just to really like chop the waters up a little bit. I am of the opinion, speaking from that kind of realm, the LGBTQ realm, there's the raging debate about adoption and LGBTQ households, supportive or otherwise, parents. And I'm of the opinion that at least until other stuff gets figured out, better for kids to have any version of supportive parents as opposed to none. So you'll meet a lot of Christians, Catholics, whatever, who say, oh no, gay household, men or women can't have that. And I'm like, well, are your choices that or nothing? Like orphanage
Right.
or nothing?
Yeah.
Because I feel like you gotta give a chance for gay households to or I guess, am I saying this right? Does gay only imply two men? This is how ignorant I am. I guess maybe this is why it's a good discussion for us. Is that two men and two women? Does
My
that cover both?
understanding is the gay is homosexual.
Okay, so
That's
both.
my understanding.
Yeah, so to me, a gay household with actual supportive parents is better than orphanage.
Mhm.
So at the very least, you have to allow for the fact that like there's some potential good, even religiously speaking, that can come out of this versus nothing. You don't want to just be like completely say no. So yeah, it'll be interesting. I welcome the other side. Like I said, I mean, if nothing else, it becomes an iron sharpens iron kind of perspective where it'd be stupid of us to spout off on something without giving the other side a good shake. So I'm actually mildly excited about it. I'm interested to see what comes of it.
Yeah, me too. It'll be fun. So we'll have that conversation. And like I said, you're probably going to hear that before you hear this. So we'll call this one a post date.
Hopefully, my goodness. We're
Yeah,
almost there. We're closer. We used to be like 5, 6, 7 episodes away, and now we're like
only a
3.
few
So
away. Yeah, we're getting there.
it only took us like 5 months to make up 2 episodes.
when you don't record for 4 or 5 weeks in a row, it gets closer.
Stop it.
I
Don't
do
tell them
have
that part.
I do have one more update that I've actually been itching to share now for, gosh, I think over a month.
Did you
Remember
do it?
back to our banana truck episode where the banana truck
Oh,
crashed
yeah.
and went everywhere. And then there was another crash with
honey.
with honey and bees.
Mhm.
There's been another crash. I'm convinced that there's something to this, that there's a conspiracy
The
happening.
stock market.
A truck full of watermelons. Once again, we're going with the sweet treats. And a truck full of watermelons in Arkansas crashed, left a watermelon spill on the side of the roadway, and
No.
officials are not releasing information on the cause of the crash. Suspicious? I think so.
Because the truck driver had an unexplained orgasm.
Someone used their superpowers unwisely.
This is what, yeah, I was going to say really unwisely. They should have gone for strawberry next. No one's like, oh, I'm going to grab a banana watermelon smoothie. No, everyone grabs a banana strawberry smoothie. Get it right.
Yeah, but this is Arkansas, the middle of June. When I think of my time down south, I think of
I mean,
cutting
that's
up
fine.
watermelons in the summer.
Yeah,
Like,
okay,
there was a
that's
lot of that.
good, but then why the banana stuff up in the East Coast? Like what that
Different time of year. And then the honey was up there too. So maybe they're making like banana Foster. I don't know.
I don't know. So banana one was the real perp, the serial killer, and the watermelon one is just an imitator.
Okay.
They're just mimicking.
Okay.
They don't actually have an
A
agenda.
copycat crasher.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
A copycat orgasmer.
Oh, I'm gonna regret that I brought that one up.
Yeah, you are. That's gonna be the title of the episode. Is like, are you a copycat orgasmer? That won't be the title, I promise.
No, that will
We'll
not be the title of the episode. All right. Yeah, those are my updates. Aside from my take on the Trump assassination attempt, is looking more and more likely to be a really good take.
What was your take?
That it was someone on the inside helped facilitate this thing from happening, and that we would find out that things didn't add up the way that they initially
looked. Oh, yeah. No, well, duh. I mean, like, it just like I said, I thought it was some version of planned or staged or whatever, with just him putting his fist in the air. And I mean, the more information comes out, the more it's just obvious that if Trump or his camp was not privy to something, then it still was obviously manufactured in some way. I mean, for that whole PD to come out and basically be like, yeah, no, nobody talked to us ever. I mean, that was, you don't find entire public service departments coming out and basically like putting the onus on a federal level agency. They just don't do that unless they think it's in their best interest. So that alone was like, okay, yeah, so there was something federally happening conspiracy wise. I think this is another one the conspiracy theorists are winning on at the very least.
Yeah, there's a lot that's unfortunately super shady adding up on this, and it's going to be an odd. I'm going to do an odd on it later this week. I'm very excited about that.
If you've researched it enough, I'll listen to that. I have not researched it enough, but I'm the person that I don't like when conspiracy theorists actually have some leverage. I don't like that. I like the simplest institutional explanation for things, because that's just easiest. It's easiest to cope with, it's easiest to live with, it's easiest to rationalize. But when conspiracy theorists start like winning when stuff comes out, it really bothers me, because then it upsets my own little world order. So
I love it. I love it. I love it.
I'm glad you love it. Must be nice. Good for you. Go team. Go team Tom.
All right. Talk nicely to your neighbors about us. Do some dad homeworks. Share our podcast with one friend. Not this one, because we're talking about
not this one.
Weird orgasming powers and things.
Why did we? Well,
share a nicer episode of us with one of your friends.
Their opinion's going to change of you when you share this to them. And be like, what are you looking for? Remember when we had nothing to talk about tonight? Whenever we have nothing to talk about, it always turns into a longer spiel. So, all
right. Well, next time we talk, I'm going to bring why you should lie to your kids to the table. I'll stake my claim in that one.
That'll be good. Okay. Yeah. Speaking of legacy. All right.
We're going to go there.
Bye, Felicios.
Bye, guys.
Hit the button, damn it.
I don't have the button.
Oh, wait. Oh, I was doing it.
I'm trying and I don't have the button.
This should stay in the recording. Just me being like,
Doug's superpower is not clicking.